Exposed, the amazing night she accepted his offer for revenge, uncovering transformative secrets, Sarah Thompson's heart sank into her stomach, her pristine classroom morphing into a cage of despair. The familiar clack of shoes echoed down the hall, each step pounding against her resolve. Mr. Darnell's voice cut through her daydreams, arrogant and dismissive, labeling her teaching methods outdated. Dread poisoned her thoughts. Had all her efforts been for nothing? The vibrant chemistry apparatus behind her felt like relics in a museum, gathering dust. In Maplewood, where each whisper could shatter lives, her reputation teetered on the brink, and she couldn't afford to lose her footing. What if she were dismissed? Flashes of her dismal finances danced in her mind: overdue bills, grocery clearance racks, student loan statements. The sinking weight of failure bore down on her, vulnerability pooling just beneath the surface. Trust faded like smoke. She glanced at the students, brainy misfits who never quite fit in. Did she owe it to them to fight back, or was she simply holding on to a career that had long passed its glory? As twilight draped Maplewood in dusky tones, her phone rang, breaking her trance. George Marston. A name she hadn't thought of in years, yet the sweet nostalgia and bitter regret flooded her thoughts. The former student had been a fire starter, sparking intrigue in class. Now he was a tech titan. Sarah. His voice danced through the receiver, bubbling with enthusiasm. I have an idea. Let us disrupt the system that undervalues life-changing teachers like you. I want revenge against them. A shiver ran down her spine. Revenge. The term beckoned alluringly, igniting an ember within her, a long-forgotten warmth that whispered of strength. As she listened, George's fervor painted a world where she might expose their incompetence, where her voice could echo like a rallying cry. She hesitated. What would that mean for her integrity? The battle within surged. The very idea of retaliation sounded intoxicating. Before the tides of thought could sweep her away, a bitter truth washed over her: her family legacy. Letters from her grandfather revealed his brilliant contributions to chemistry, an inspiring hero who transformed lives, a figure far removed from the pettiness of her current plight. A purpose hidden, waiting for her beyond the shackles of doubt. But as her heart raced, realizations squeezed her chest. What if she didn't live up to that legacy? What of the very indignities she sought to conquer? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Her heart thudded dangerously as she dwelled on the prospect of gathering evidence against Darnell and the corrupt faculty who sprang from connections rather than merit. The thrill felt profound, yet disquiet mixed with ambition. Was she ready to become a watchdog and risk everything? Breathless, visions collided: Sarah, the scorned teacher on a war path, or Sarah, the educator, nurturing hope. With an ambiguous future fixed in her mind and a shaky sense of direction, she found herself eyeing the boundaries she was about to cross. Drawing in a shaky breath, she realized the stakes could skyrocket beyond her control. Just as she prepared to confront Darnell, doubts clawed at her resolve. Was anyone worth sacrificing her integrity for? Did she dare plant the seeds of deceit, knowing they might take root in her own garden? Swaying on the edge of choices thick with peril, Sarah felt her world tightening around her. Would she dive headfirst into the depths of revenge, or flip the script, redefining her path towards redemption? Moments ticked by, leaving her on a tightrope of uncertainty, her next move weighing heavily against the horizon of her future. In a world fixated on ambition, she grappled with a burning question: could she reclaim her spark without losing herself in the dance of shadows? The late evening air hung thick with a weight that mirrored Sarah's internal turmoil. Her skin prickled as the glow of her phone illuminated her contemplative face. George's words had ignited something dormant within her, a flicker of rebellious energy she hadn't felt since her glory days in the lab. Could she channel this adrenaline into action instead of bitterness? Or would the pursuit of revenge create a chasm between who she was and who she aspired to be? In the solitude of her dimly lit classroom, Sarah glanced at the relics of her passion, the worn textbooks and the chemistry gear, once symbols of her enthusiasm, now reminders of her stagnation. She envisioned herself as a catalyst, not just in chemistry but in the very fabric of her life. That illustrious legacy of her grandfather loomed large, a beacon urging her to rise. Could she invoke his spirit to guide her? Determined to find clarity, she stood and faced the whiteboard. The once blank slate had become a canvas for her swirling thoughts. Glancing at the nearby chemical formulas plastered on the wall, inspiration struck. What if she peeled back the layers of deception that surrounded the administration? Could she harness the burgeoning tech world that George was part of, using it as leverage to reform? After all, what was revenge but a stepping stone toward unearthing truth? She mused, her mind raced with possibilities. A small group of students had tried to rally support for a more hands-on curriculum, a movement that had been stifled by Darnell and his allies. If she could turn their disenfranchisement into potent evidence, she might reveal the exploitation masquerading as education. Her hesitation began to dissipate, replaced by an urgency to uplift instead of obliterate. However, she still felt the tightening grip of dread at the thought of confrontation. Justifying her actions became paramount. If she wished to usher in change, especially as a teacher, she needed a strategy. She realized that evidence alone would not be enough. She had to construct a narrative, one that pulled at the common thread of shared disappointment among her colleagues, the disillusionment that had resulted from an administration entrenched in complacency. Sarah seized a pen, her thoughts racing from her stark observations to tangible plans. She jotted notes on her ideas, assemble the students, connect with George for resources, and unveil a manifesto detailing how systemic change could empower teachers and students alike. Each word on the page felt like a move toward reclaiming her power, but the underlying fear of repercussions whispered reminders of the potential backlash from Darnell and the administration. But flickers of her grandfather's principles flashed before her, reminders of his courage in facing adversity. If she could tap into that legacy and those teachings, her path toward transformation would not only free her but could also amplify the voices of others suffocated by the pent-up frustrations of the system. As the classroom lights hummed softly, Sarah felt resolve solidifying within her. The previous night's doubts crumbled like the dust of the past. Yes, her choices were reckless, but the choice to be vocal, to be a vessel of change, was necessary. The moment drew near she would connect with her students and empower them, blending her professional goals with personal evolution. Yet just as the vision sharpened, a foreboding thought crept in: how would Darnell retaliate? The arena of conflict was only beginning to unfold. As dawn crept closer, she could sense the tremors of confrontation rising in the air, anticipation a knot in her stomach. Resolute yet anxious, Sarah took a deep breath. The time had come to gather allies and prepare for battle. What ramifications awaited her as she took this path? And would she still be who she wanted to be by the end of it all? She stepped back from the board, her fingers lingering over the words she'd written, suddenly aware that the next step could alter everything: her career, her integrity, and her future. Would liberation spark rebellion, or would the fire consume her? The dawn beckoned, and all at once she understood. It was time to awaken a new force within her or risk being overshadowed once more. The air grew cooler as the first rays of sunlight seeped into the classroom. Sarah stood alone with her thoughts, the magnitude of her decision pressing down on her. She had a choice: she could retreat into the safety of silence or step into the fray, risking everything for a cause she felt was just. Her mind cycled through potential conversations with her students. Each scenario felt daunting, a cacophony of voices filled her head as she tried to imagine their reactions. Would they see her as a mentor or as a fool endangering their futures? The thought of gathering them together, to share her clandestine plans, filled her with both anticipation and dread. Caught between excitement and fear, she reminded herself of her grandfather's teachings. His voice echoed within her, urging her not to shy away from standing up for what is right. With resolve brewing, she set about organizing her approach. First, she needed to identify the students she believed would rally behind her, a select few who demonstrated not only intelligence but also the fire of innovation. They needed to be passionate, willing to push boundaries. As she glanced at her classroom, the faces of eager learners flashed before her, bright with the potential that she saw buried under layers of administrative oppression. Sarah decided to send a discreet message to a few of her most promising students. It was imperative that she chose her words carefully, invoking curiosity without revealing too much. Let us meet after school. I have ideas about our curriculum that could transform our classes. Join me. Even as she typed out the words, a tight knot of anxiety twisted within her. What if they turned her down? What if they were too afraid to act? As the hours dragged on, each tick of the clock felt like an eternity. She felt raw energy coursing through her veins, a peculiar blend of hope and worry. When the final bell rang, she took a deep breath, stepping outside her comfort zone and transforming into the architect of her own fate. The classroom door creaked open, and one by one, her chosen students arrived. There was Ethan, a sharp-minded senior with a knack for problem-solving, Mia, whose creativity knew no bounds, and Marcus, a natural leader with a charismatic presence. Sarah welcomed them, her heart pounding as she prepared to lay her vision before them. Thank you all for coming. I want to discuss the real potential of our education here, she began, her voice steady despite the trepidation quaking inside her. I've been watching you all struggle under the current system, and I've realized how stifled you must feel. I believe we can change that. Their expressions varied from puzzled to intrigued, but she could see sparks of understanding igniting amidst the confusion. She outlined her ideas about a curriculum that would prioritize experiential learning and critical thinking, rather than mere rote memorization. Together, they could formulate a way to present this to the administration. Ethan spoke up first, but how do we convince them? Darnell 1T just let this happen. His concern was valid, and yet it made Sarah's pulse quicken. The risks were immense, but with the right strategy, they could navigate the murky waters ahead. If we gather evidence against the outdated practices and create a compelling narrative, she suggested, her mind racing with possibilities. We can demonstrate how this change will benefit everyone involved, including our professors and even the administration. Who will truly benefit from stifling our creativity? The energy in the room shifted as enthusiasm bubbled beneath the surface. They began brainstorming for ways to collect student experiences, using surveys and testimonials that could potentially expose the administration's failings. Sarah was surprised at how quickly they found common ground, turning her initial fear into courage. Perhaps she wasn't alone in this fight after all. As ideas flew and momentum built, she felt the warmth of renewed purpose flow through her. They were creating a plan, and with it, she could feel the weight of oppression starting to lift. Each suggestion built upon the last, every voice melding into a powerful chorus for change, but as the discussion grew animated, the specter of Darnell loomed larger in her mind. If they were to expose the truths hidden beneath the surface, confrontation with him was inevitable. That thought brought a wave of uncertainty crashing back. What challenges awaited them? Would they even have the strength to withstand the pushback? Sarah's thoughts spiraled, even as the weight of possibility hung in the air. She knew they were entering uncharted territory. Her resolve would soon be tested in ways she had never imagined. Conversations would lead to action, but how far they would go remained uncertain. She inhaled deeply, ready to embrace both the promise and peril that lay ahead. "Are you ready for this?" she asked her students, her voice steady now, filled with newfound conviction. They nodded, but their excitement was tempered by the weight of reality. Sarah felt the knot of anticipation tighten once more, as she prepared for the trials ahead. The journey was only just beginning, and ahead lay a confrontation that would undoubtedly challenge everything she stood for. What would the repercussions of their fight for change entail? And would they emerge from this transformative struggle, or risk being swallowed whole by the very system they aimed to dismantle? Sarah awoke the next morning with a whirlwind of thoughts competing for her attention. The enormity of the task ahead weighed heavily on her mind, mingling with the flicker of excitement that was hard to suppress. After her meeting with the students, she realized that this venture was no longer solely about them, it was about her personal evolution, a challenge to her beliefs and courage. What lay before her was a potential rebirth. As she prepared her morning coffee, she struggled with the fear of being perceived as reckless. The image of Darnell's stern face popped into her thoughts, reminding her of the many meetings where his dismissive comments had left her feeling powerless. She remembered every time his inaction had stifled a creative solution instead of supporting it. Yet now, she felt the fire of determination flickering within her, urging her to confront her own history of silence. With her coffee in hand, she opened her laptop to draft a strategy for the students. How could they present their findings to the administration while remaining united and unwavering? The thought of rejection gnawed at her. What if they encountered roadblocks and chose to abandon the cause? She couldn't allow that to happen. As she typed, she felt a surge of inspiration. The key was to make the narrative personal. Each student could share their journey through the current system, their frustrations, dreams, and the future they envisioned. As she brainstormed, an idea began to take shape. They could create a digital presentation that would not only highlight the failings of the existing curriculum but also showcase the passions and creativity of her students. By the time she finished her outline, Sarah was bubbling with enthusiasm. She felt empowered by the prospect of transformation, not just for her students, but for herself as well. The obstacles that lay ahead seemed less daunting, rather, they were stepping stones to her growth. That afternoon, she returned to school, the weight of her resolve visibly stronger. As the students gathered once more, she shared her detailed plan. The look on their faces as she spoke ignited her belief that they were on the precipice of something significant. Ethan, Mia, and Marcus leaned in, their expressions reflecting a mix of shy excitement and burgeoning confidence. They were captivated by the prospect of collaborating to expose not just the issues but the solutions, illustrating a brighter vision for their futures. "Let us also include what we hope to achieve," Mia suggested, her voice laced with optimism. "How do we see this school evolving? What does success look like for us?" Sarah's heart soared. This was not merely an attempt to critique but a profound opportunity for growth, both personal and institutional. As ideas flowed, the students began to open up, discussing the many subjects they were passionate about, their dreams, and how they felt limited by the very system designed to educate them. Despite their enthusiasm, Sarah felt a tiny seed of worry sprouting again. Behind every creative spark lay the absolute certainty that Darnell would push back. But in that moment, she resolved to face him, both for her students and herself. Deep down, she feared his judgment, the condescension that had become all too familiar. The vulnerability of revealing her intentions to him clawed at her, yet she knew that the fire of conviction had to drown out the echoes of doubt. As they wrapped up the session, Sarah gathered her students close, the weight of their aspirations thick in the air. "You all have the power to drive this change," she said, her voice steady. "But I need to know that you'll stand with me when it gets tough." They nodded, a chorus of determination resonating among them. There, in that moment, Sarah felt the shift within herself, the transformation from uncertainty to empowerment. The struggle ahead was daunting, but it felt more like an adventure now. They were standing together, ready to challenge the status quo. However, just as the excitement peaked, she caught sight of Darnell's shadow passing through the doorway. A knot tightened in her stomach as his scowl cut through the momentary bliss. His gaze was piercing, as if he could sense the undertow of rebellion already brewing. The confrontation was near. What would he say? Would he belittle their efforts or attempt to break their spirit? Sarah straightened her back, bracing herself for the upheaval that was about to unfold. The time had come to face the man who dictated their limitations. The stakes had never been so high, and the outcome remained painfully uncertain. Darnell stepped into the room with an air of authority that immediately quelled the energy that had been bubbling among the students. Sarah could feel her heart rate quicken as his eyes scanned over the group, resting momentarily on her with a mix of cold calculation and veiled contempt. "What's this?" he asked, his tone flat yet imbued with an underlying challenge. A little brainstorming session? Or are we already drafting a proposal I'm not aware of? The tension in the air felt thick enough to slice through, and Sarah fought the urge to retreat into her thoughts. Instead, she stood taller, her resolve cementing itself in the moment. This was no longer about simply defending her students, it was about reclaiming her voice and showing Darnell that she would stand for what was right. Yes, we are, Sarah replied, her voice steadier than she expected. We're discussing ways to improve the curriculum. Darnell's lips curled into a dismissive smile, but there was a spark of interest in his gaze. Improvement is a lofty term for a system that has served us well for so long, don't you think? His words struck her as sardonic, yet they galvanized her. He was trying to undermine their efforts, trying to stifle what could be a catalyst for change. Sarah glanced at her students, whose expressions mirrored a mix of anxiety and determination. Maybe it's time that we redefine what serving means, she countered, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her notebook, a familiar comfort that helped ground her. The current curriculum doesn't fit the needs or dreams of the students anymore. It's not enough to keep pushing the same antiquated materials. A brief flicker of surprise crossed Darnell's face, although he quickly masked it. And who, may I ask, do you believe you're speaking for? The needs and dreams of a handful of students? He gestured dismissively. There's students who matter, Sarah asserted, her confidence rising. They are the lifeblood of this institution. Helping them thrive is essential to the school's future. Darnell leaned back against the wall, arms crossed, a glint of something darker in his expression. You're getting emotionally involved, Sarah. It's dangerous. If you push too hard, you might find yourself alone in this. For a brief moment, Sarah felt the stab of doubt, but it was quickly overshadowed by her growing resolve. She wasn't going to allow Darnell's attempts to intimidate her dictate the path she and her students would take. Being passionate about education should never be seen as dangerous, she replied, her voice quiet but firm. If there's a risk in this, then so be it. The possibility of change outweighs the fear of confrontation. Darnell narrowed his eyes, and a moment of silence hung in the air, charged with unspoken tension. Her students watched the exchange, their faith in their teacher visibly swelling as she held her ground. Fine, Darnell said at last, breaking the silence, if you think you can sway the administration into listening to your creative ideas, I wish you luck. But just remember, change is not easy. The mixture of relief and defiance that surged through Sarah pushed her to respond. It never is, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't happen. With a slight nod, Darnell turned on his heel and strode out, the door clicking shut behind him. A collective breath escaped her students, their tension dissipating as excitement dulled the remnants of fear. That was epic. Mia exclaimed. Sarah glanced at her students, their eyes shining with newfound confidence. She felt an unexpected warmth spread through her. They were committing to this journey together, confronting both their limitations and the looming obstacles presented by institutional rigidity. But with Darnell now informed of their intentions, her mind raced with questions. What would his next move be? How far would he go to maintain the status quo? As they regrouped to refine their presentation, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the confrontation was just the beginning. There would be more battles ahead, not just with the administration but within herself as well. Every moment of doubt she faced now felt like an opportunity for growth, yet it was also a reminder of the stakes involved. With determination stealing her spine, she focused on the task at hand. Yet, beneath it all, a sense of urgency pulsed through her. The path to transformation was fraught with uncertainty, and the next steps would be crucial. But even as she strategized, a shadow of unease lingered. The confrontation had only scratched the surface. What hidden resistance lurked beneath Darnell's dismissive exterior? What deeper secrets lay within the system? The clock was ticking, and with each tick, Sarah understood that the upcoming days would define them all. The real challenge was still ahead. The day unfolded with an unexpected energy, as if the air had charged with purpose. After Darnell's departure, Sarah gathered her students, their initial euphoria soon tempered by the hard reality that lay ahead. Ideas began to flow, fueled by the adrenaline of their confrontation. Yet, Sarah felt a dissonance within herself, a quiet fear treading the back of her mind. They spread their notes across the table, any semblance of hierarchy in the classroom dissipating as each student found their voice. Mia flipped through her notes, her enthusiasm infectious. "We should pitch incorporating technology in the curriculum. It resonates with their interests." Sarah watched as her students collaborated, their talents blending in a beautiful amalgamation of visions. It was a moment of triumph, a glimpse of what could come to fruition. Yet still, Darnell's words echoed, "Change is not easy." "You're right," she interjected, cutting through the proposal excitement. "But we need to ensure our ideas are backed by critical research. We can't just suggest changes because they seem exciting, we have to substantiate why they are necessary." One student, Jordan, raised an eyebrow. "Are you worried about Darnell?" That question hung in the air, weighing heavy. "I believe in what we're doing, but we can't underestimate the inertia of tradition in this institution. We must be strategic." Internal conflict brewed, and as they worked, Sarah's thoughts spiraled in various directions. How could they prepare for the inevitable pushback? She realized that the stakes were precariously high. This wasn't merely an academic endeavor anymore. This was personal, rife with fear and potential loss of control, credibility, and support among her peers. The hours slipped away as they meticulously crafted their proposal. When finally they emerged, exhausted but exhilarated, the glimmer of hope intermingled with a gnawing apprehension. The transformation they sought was budding, yet Sarah felt the clouds of uncertainty closing in. Later that evening, Sarah sat alone at her kitchen table, the residual energy from the day still coursing through her. Questions swirled in her mind. Was she ready to face what came next? How deeply had Darnell rooted himself in the system? She realized that Darnell's dismissive demeanor might mask something darker, a fierce protectiveness over his established power. It was at that moment her phone buzzed, vibrating across the table. She picked it up to find a message from a colleague, alerting her to a staff meeting hastily scheduled for the following day. It would address the new directives regarding curriculum proposals. The urgency clawed at her. An idea sparked within her, igniting a strand of resolve. She could turn this meeting into an opportunity. Increase her leverage. If there was an opportunity to face Darnell directly, she'd take it. With renewed determination, she crossed her arms and leaned back in her chair, envisioning the trajectory of her career. This could be the turning point that defined not only her professional path but also who she was as a leader. She wouldn't just confront Darnell, she would work to expose the flaws in the system itself. As night settled around her, a glint of fierce determination flickered into focus. The following day could shift everything. The essential opportunity for confrontation lay ahead. But one nagging thought persisted. What would that confrontation reveal, not just about Darnell, but about herself? Resolving to prepare herself both intellectually and emotionally, she realized that this journey was as much about discovering the depths of her own resilience as it was about effecting change. What she didn't yet know was that in confronting Darnell, she would also have to confront something buried deep within herself, her own doubts. Tomorrow held the potential for a new beginning, but also the specter of her past fears creeping up, ready to unravel her newfound purpose. As dawn broke, Sarah found herself ensnared in the tightening grip of anxiety. Last night's resolve felt fragile this morning, a ceramic tile now vulnerable to cracks. The kitchen table, once a place of inspiration, stood as a stark reminder that she was preparing for a battle, one that could redefine her standing within the establishment. Moments before she left for school, she scribbled crucial points on a notepad, her thoughts a tempest as she contemplated the potential outcomes of the impending meeting. Driving to school, the streets pulsed with rhythm, yet Sarah's mind raced offbeat. She envisioned the staff room where colleagues exchanged pleasantries. Her heart drummed in her chest, the sound echoing her uncertainty. How would she present her ideas? Would they be met with enthusiasm or derision? The image of Darnell's sly smile surfaced in her thoughts, a reminder that his dominance had bred a culture of compliance. Upon entering the building, she was greeted by welcoming nods, but an unsettling silence enveloped her as she approached the staff room. The anticipation was palpable, all eyes seemed to be on her. She inhaled deeply, attempting to gather her fragmented courage. Just as she stepped into the room, the unmistakable presence of Darnell filled her vision, clad in his usual stern demeanor. "Good morning, everyone," he began, his tone intentionally neutral, like a judge before a trial. "We have a lot to discuss today regarding our curriculum direction." As the meeting unfolded, Darnell artfully manipulated the agenda, steering discussions toward familiar, safe waters. Sarah listened, frustration simmering beneath her composed exterior. He and his allies deftly dismissed the idea of incorporating new technology, illustrating every counterargument with anecdotes of their own childhood educational experiences. It was clear that tradition loomed large in Darnell's world, but Sarah's vision surged defiantly beneath the surface, waiting for an opening. Her mind raced with thoughts about her students, their capabilities and aspirations. As she caught sight of Mia through the glass wall, an unwelcome knot tightened in her stomach. Those eager voices she had rallied, full of hope, now felt a world apart from the static environment that surrounded her. Finally, the moment she'd been waiting for arrived. Darnell paused, leaning back, smug satisfaction radiating as he surveyed the group. Sarah seized that opening, her heart fueled with resolve. "I believe we need to embrace current educational trends and explore how technology can enhance our curriculum," she said, her voice steady yet tinged with urgency. Immediate responses rippled through the room, some nodding hesitantly, others shooting her skeptical glances. Darnell, however, merely raised an eyebrow, the gesture reeking of condescension. "And what evidence do you have to support this radical shift?" he challenged, his tone insinuating beneath the surface of respect. Taking a breath, Sarah launched her prepared arguments, weaving data and empirical studies to strategically dismantle his defenses. The words flowed, inspired by the unity of her students' ambitions. But then came the unexpected. Darnell's skepticism transformed into a shark-like grin as he confidently diffused her arguments, cloaked in layers of jargon and authoritative anecdotes. The room felt charged. The air thickened as Sarah watched her peers retreat under Darnell's authoritative sway. Each nodding head disheartened her further, a fracture in the support she desperately needed. But as he continued to undermine her proposition, something ignited within her. In that moment, her frustration crystallized into a determination so fierce, it felt almost tangible. She was not just advocating for a change in the curriculum, she was fighting for a rebirth of possibility, both for her students and perhaps for herself as well. Her identity as an educator teetered on the brink of transformation, and she sensed that the hesitation she felt was more about her own self-worth than Darnell's derision. "I believe we owe it to our students to be the educators they deserve," she declared, her voice piercing through the murmurings. "To ignore their needs and vision is to deny a future we should be cultivating." A profound silence followed, broken only by Darnell's condescending scoff. "And how far would you be willing to go to pursue this passion?" His question, sharp and pointed, hung in the air and beckoned her deeper into this confrontation. The stakes were higher than she ever anticipated, her future hanging in the balance, and she realized her fear had transformed. The fight she faced was more than with Darnell, it was against the doubts she had harbored all along. Before she could rethink, the answer formed hesitantly on her lips: "As far as it takes." With that, the tension in the room shifted. The taste of revolution lingered on her tongue, and Sarah sensed that this battle could mark not just her career, but the very essence of her identity. What would she uncover next, not just about Darnell, but about her own limits as she stood on the precipice of professional warfare? Sarah's thoughts raced as Darnell's smug expression dominated her view, his condescension palpable. She felt like a tightrope walker, balanced precariously over an abyss of self-doubt and fear. Each second that ticked by deepened her resolve to reclaim her voice, her place, not just within the meeting but as an educator capable of affecting real change. Drawing a deep breath, she braced herself against Darnell's probing gaze. This wasn't merely a conversation about technology, it was about integrity in education and the futures of her students. She refused to back down, even if her knees felt as shaky as they did that first day she stepped into a classroom. Let us consider the research, she started again, her tone firm and unwavering. Studies show that integrating technology not only increases engagement but also equips students with vital skills. A low murmur moved through the room, conflicting emotions playing across her colleagues' faces. Sarah felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she hadn't lost them. Darnell, however, had no intention of allowing her to regain control. Hypothetical outcomes. 1T cut it, Sarah. We need pragmatic solutions. His voice dripped with skepticism, the sharpness of his words cutting into her budding confidence. She could see his machinations at work. He thrived on the battlefield of ideas, and today, she was standing in the ring. Determination surged within her. Pragmatic doesn't mean traditional, Darnell. It means adaptive. Our students today are equipped with tools their predecessors wouldn't even dream of. She could feel the room shift slightly, some colleagues willing to entertain her thoughts. The mind of an educator should be about inspiration, she reminded herself, not criminalized by the past, but Darnell was relentless. You perceive change but fail to understand its complexities. Evidence isn't just numbers, it's context. Context. The word burst from her lips, shocking herself with its intensity. Context shifts. We cannot capsize students' futures with outdated perspectives. Adrenaline surged, there was no turning back. With each rebuttal from Darnell, she found herself digging deeper into her conviction, piecing together not only statistics but stories of her students, of Mia and her experiments in virtual learning, of Malik and his newfound confidence in his coding abilities. Names that represented change, progress, and hope. The floodgates of imagination opened, drowning Darnell's authoritative anecdotes with vivid examples of real-life applications and transformative experiences. As she spoke, her own realization edged into her consciousness. This was not just her battle but the embodiment of her mission as an educator. Yet, with every moment she claimed, Darnell tightened his grip, and his allies, intimidated yet instinctually loyal, mirrored his disapproval. Anxiety curled in her stomach, threatening to unravel her newly found power. How could she combat not only him but the comfort zone ingrained in her colleagues? Sarah locked eyes with Darnell, and a new idea sparked within her. What if we were to pilot a small program? A test run to validate these changes? We could analyze the outcomes without risking our entire curriculum. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Darnell's expression. She seized the moment, reinforcing her stance. What could there be to lose if we're willing to evaluate rather than dismiss? The silence was unbearable, but it was also liberating. Eyes darted around the room, gauging reactions. Some whispered to one another, their doubt slowly turning into intrigue. Others leaned forward, an implicit understanding hidden behind tentative smiles. She had initiated a dialogue that pushed against the walls of their collective hesitance. Darnell weighed his next words, but Sarah held her breath, internally counting the seconds. The stakes were higher than she imagined. She could feel a new destiny being carved from the bones of her fears. What if we agree to this pilot, but you bear complete responsibility if it fails? Darnell's voice cut through the charged air. Are you willing to gamble your career on it? Crystalline clarity washed over her. She wasn't merely gambling, she was investing in the very essence of who she had become as an educator. Mind racing, she made up her mind. Yes, she affirmed. I'm willing to go as far as it takes to prove that our students deserve better. With that, her fate intertwined irrevocably with the ambitions of her students. Sarah felt a rush of exhilaration, tempered by the weight of Darnell's challenge. As she stepped back, the gravity of her admission settled over her like a heavy cloak. Flashes of possibility surged forth, her colleagues hesitant yet stirred, Darnell confronted but calculating. This moment marked a turning point, a moment where her professional worth suddenly swelled against the tide of conformity. What awaited her in the aftermath of her high-stakes gamble? Sarah's pulse quickened as she left the meeting room. The walls seemed to close in on her, yet her mind was ablaze with possibilities. Each footstep echoed her racing thoughts, a reminder of the stakes she had just accepted and the responsibility she had taken on. Was she ready? The self-doubt, which threatened to creep back in, was met with the burgeoning confidence she had tapped into during the debate. She had uncovered something vital within herself, a resilience she hadn't acknowledged before. It felt like taking a leap off a cliff, thrilling, horrifying, and utterly necessary. As she walked down the empty hallway, the noise of colleagues chatting faded behind her. The adrenaline buzzed through her veins, drowning out the echoes of Darnell's skepticism. She pondered how to channel that energy into her next steps. Planning the pilot program would require meticulous attention, a calculated strategy that blended innovation with the educational standards that Darnell and others held high. This was no longer just about technology, it was about bringing her vision to life, sculpting a tangible change within the rigid structure of the curriculum. Her thoughts turned to the stories of her students, their struggles and triumphs, and how this program could reshape their educational journeys. She slipped into her classroom, the scent of whiteboard markers and the remnants of yesterday's lessons grounding her amidst the whirlwind of emotions. This was her territory. She picked up a notebook, ready to draft ideas that could morph her bold intentions into actionable plans. Sarah began with the essentials, identifying objectives. What did she want to achieve? Increased engagement? Critical thinking? She jotted down each thought, feeling a renewed sense of agency. Documenting Mia and Malik's experiences brought vivid color to her concepts. They were the driving force of this initiative, her personal advocates, but looming over her aspirations was Darnell's challenge. Bearing the responsibility alone echoed in her mind. What if the program indeed failed? The fear of failure clawed at her confidence, a constant reminder of the harsh realities of accountability in education. She would need support, a coalition of like-minded educators willing to venture into the unknown with her. Taking a deep breath, Sarah refocused. She needed to present her outlined vision to her colleagues in a way that rallied them rather than pushed them away. A presentation wasn't just about the data, it was about stirring emotions and appealing to their innate desire to make a difference. The next day arrived swiftly. As she organized her thoughts and materials, a wave of apprehension washed over Sarah. She would need to confront her colleagues' fears and reluctances directly. As daring as it felt to take the lead on the pilot program, it was equally terrifying to propose change to a skeptical audience conditioned to the status quo. Arriving at the staff meeting, anxiety prickled her skin. Whispers filled the room as she set up her presentation. Colleagues exchanged glances, some curious, others bemused. Sarah locked eyes with her most supportive peers, finding strength in their silent encouragement. "Thank you all for coming," she began, feeling the weight of anticipation locking them all in place. "What I'm about to propose isn't just a program, it's an opportunity for us to redefine education for our students." She paused, letting her conviction simmer in the room. "I've seen firsthand what they can achieve when we embrace new methods. With this pilot program, we can open new doors for our students together." The room felt charged as she presented clear objectives and engaging anecdotes. Faces softened, curiosity began to replace skepticism, and the whispers faded into silence. But just as she felt the tide turning, Darnell entered the room, bringing with him a tangible tension. His presence was the heavy fog that threatened to erase the clarity she had just constructed. "Perhaps we should stick to established methods, Sarah?" Darnell's voice sliced through, igniting the simmering doubt again. "Failure isn't an option in our district." The stakes multiplied in that moment. Her heart pounded in her chest, and doubt wormed its way back into her thoughts. But just as quickly, she remembered why she fought so fiercely. "Failure," she repeated, "isn't the absence of success, it's an opportunity for growth. Are we not here to foster resilience in our students?" As she stood there, fully aware of Darnell's formidable opposition, Sarah also sensed the energy shift among her peers. Would they support her in this defining moment? Would they echo her sentiments, or would they retreat into their safe zones? Thus, she faced not just Darnell, but her own battle for belief both in herself and in the potential that lay ahead of her. Would they unite under a common goal, or would Sarah stand alone against the tide of traditionalism? The answer was crucial. She could feel the tide rolling in. She had to navigate it carefully. Would she have enough allies to withstand Darnell's onslaught? The days that followed the meeting began to solidify into a powerful experience for Sarah. She had felt the invigorating energy of transformation ripple among her peers, and the anxiety she had once felt transformed into a stimulant of purpose. Gradually, she forged ahead with the pilot program proposal, rallying a team of supportive colleagues and students who shared her vision. In her newfound role as a change agent, Sarah became a catalyst not only in the educational environment but within herself. Each day, she diligently worked alongside her team to prepare engaging materials, devise methodologies, and present the program's merits to the administration. The tighter the bonds grew among them, the more secure she felt in her abilities. It was the sense of belonging and shared ambition that fortified her confidence. The school's staff meeting for the pilot program arrived, and she entered the room with the poised attitude of a leader. Her heart raced, but it was no longer the fear of rejection, it was the adrenaline of opportunity. Together with her students and supportive colleagues, they presented a compelling case packed with data, captivating testimonials, and insights that illuminated their aspirations. Imagine a classroom, Sarah began, her voice strong and enthusiastic, where students are not merely recipients of information but active participants in their learning journey. They are innovators, problem solvers, and prepared for the future. The palpable enthusiasm in the room began eclipsing any lingering doubts. She saw flickering expressions of intrigue among those often shackled by complacency as she painted a picture of possibility. Mia stepped forward, articulating her experiences with the proposed digital tools, and Ethan highlighted the necessary skills they would be able to showcase through the pilot program. But then, Darnell's imperious presence lurked at the back of the room. He raised a brow, his skepticism palpable as he spoke. Let us not forget the messy nature of untested ideas. Are we really ready to gamble our students' futures on a mere experiment? A hush fell over the room, but Sarah found her resolve hardening. She faced him directly. Change is always a risk, Darnell. But doing nothing remaining static poses the biggest risk of all. This program is designed not merely as a shot in the dark but as an informed strategy backed by research and real student voices. With that, Sarah launched into a passionate response that expanded upon the concept of resilience, the very tenet her grandfather had instilled in her. She realized then that her struggle against Darnell mirrored the battle within herself, the doubts she had overcome and the confidence she had built. To her surprise, murmurs of support began to ripple through the audience. Faculty members one by one began to express agreement and relate personal anecdotes about frustrations within the existing system. A chorus of voices blossomed, amplifying her conviction, each validating her journey toward empowerment. As the conversation progressed, Darnell's previously unshakable facade started to reveal cracks. Each counterargument was met with a measured response that showcased not only her determination but the overwhelming consensus forming beneath her. If we pilot this program, we will not only honor our students' dreams, but we can also provide a tangible framework to evaluate its effectiveness, Sarah stated emphatically. It's time to create an educational system that matches the brilliance of our students. The meeting wrapped up on a high note. Sarah could feel the tides of change on the horizon. Weeks passed, and as the pilot program commenced, the student engagement surged. The classroom buzzed with creativity, fueled by critical thinking and collaboration. The fear of Darnell's weighty presence transformed into a motivating factor, the very entity she had conquered in her own heart. Finally, the day arrived when the results of the pilot program, backed by an overwhelming amount of data and fulfilling student experiences, were to be reported back to the entire faculty. Sarah stood in front of the room, infused with purpose, unwavering in her belief. In that moment, she recognized that she had not only transformed the educational landscape but also transcended her own limitations. Her heart swelled with undeniable satisfaction. She had reclaimed her integrity, sculpted a future for her students, and, most importantly, discovered the power of her voice. The meeting concluded with applause, a firm recognition of her accomplishments and the validation she had sought for so long. Darnell looked on, not with disdain, but with newfound respect. She had proven to herself and to her colleagues that change was not just possible, it was essential. Now, as Sarah gazed upon her students filled with opportunity, she understood the profound truth of her journey. Transformation was not just about the external world, but an internal evolution as well. Her story of resilience and rebirth resonated deeply within her, a testament to the strength of conviction ignited by purpose. Are you ready to embark on your own transformative journey? Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about this powerful conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring journey of overcoming hurdles. You need to subscribe now, and don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.